approach. And so we've done that through the strategic plan, and we have to be results oriented in that. When I came to the HR office as an executive director of HR 6 years ago, there had been some improvements, but relationships across the district were not in a good place. And I had been there for 12 years, so I knew the things that had to be done. And my goal in being a transformational leader is that we're gonna do right by people. People is our business. So if I believe that if we explain the why of situations, tough situations that we were in, that we had to go through, and look for a win-win, people would be better off getting to the other side. And so what I said, we were gonna be about staff, students, staff, and community. We're gonna focus on what was best for students, we're gonna focus on taking care of our staff, and all of that would be of benefit to the community. So transformational leader has been a part of that. I also want to share too, the business office, as I took over working with the maintenance and operations part of the district, we needed to break down what I call these silos that were across the district. We all worked in the central office, but it felt like we couldn't get communication through. We weren't able to work together, and I said, listen, our jobs will be easier if we can communicate, if we can build some synergies by being transparent and collaborative. So very clearly, that was something that I had done in the HR office across the district with all of our unions. We started really implementing that in the other departments in the last couple of years in the central office. And I think our people are better for it, I think our processes are better, and ultimately that's good for our students in teaching and learning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lundberg. Based on your research of the district, how would you go about cultivating a productive relationship with and amongst the Board of Education?
I think the superintendent and the Board of Education need to be a team of 8. And any team in a building, you have to be able to work together, have the tough conversations, and find the best way forward. Our students are depending on that. And so if we model what a professional learning community looks like, that's the PLC, then we are the chief models of what we expect to go on in the rest of the district. In our school buildings, in our classrooms, on our fields. And so we have to model that. And so we have to be able to have those tough conversations, make the tough decisions, but when we're out in public, we have to be able to do what's best for the students and the teaching and learning in the district. One of the things that I'll talk about probably a couple times tonight is this Rick DeFore and Michael Fullen. This is Cultures Built to Last. You want to have a successful, transparent, collaborative culture, and then you want to build those professional learning communities from the top on down. And we can't just say this is what we're going to do. We have to model it. We have to lead it. That starts at the top with the board and the superintendent. You have to talk about what are your commitments and what are your agreements and how are you going to operate as that team of 8 leading a district this size. Things will be caught before they're taught. They will see how we're working, they will know what's expected, and then they will also say, hey, that's the way we need to work together for what's best for everyone. And I have found that when we're working together, we work through the tough conversations, it's just a lot easier to do that. So sometimes you have to get over some of those challenges. The other thing I would look for with the board is I want to reach out in any situation to MASB for some professional learning for the board and the new superintendent if I was chosen, and that we could really start on a very strong foundation to lead the district the best way forward.
Thank you very much.
If you could please describe what your track record is with regard to attracting and retaining school personnel, including instructional staff and resources.
Well, the first thing is you want to make sure all of your processes are in place. That is, it's easy for people to find where your postings are. And so we've done some cleaning up of our website in the last couple of years, making sure our processes are set not only so folks can see where our postings are, but then our supervisors and our principals have good processes in place. And then where we help is the onboarding. When we bring new staff in, the onboarding is critical, because how do you, we're the first people really introducing new staff members into the district. And so through an HR perspective, we want to lead what that's going to look like. I can tell you in the last 6 years, I usually do, actually annually do an HR report to the board, where we talk about transition, we talk about teacher attrition, and I can tell you I'm pleased that the average tends to be 6% of what we've looked at. We did have a little spike last year, 9%. The reason I say that is you have to monitor the data, not just have the data, but monitor it and see what's happening. Why are people leaving? About 5 years ago, my department and I, we initiated and began an exit survey. So an exit survey goes out to every employee that leaves the district, and they can choose to mail it in, they can choose to call, or they can choose to meet with me or my supervisor. Now, does everyone do that? No. But I can tell you, those that have something to say are the ones that are going to let us know. And that's really what we need to be listening for. The other piece is we just have to keep our ears to the ground. We need to know what's working and what's not. And again, we want to make sure that the culture is one where people can find professional growth within the district, within their position, and be able to feel good about where they're working. So again, coming back to that culture, that professional learning community is critically important. And as finances have been limited, the one thing I've done with all of the groups is we talk through bargaining and through contract maintenance. What are the things that make your jobs difficult? Are there some non-financial things that we can look at that will actually help your job go a little bit easier? And I will tell you that a lot of times that helps us move us a little bit further, even in times of tight finances.
Tell us about a situation in which you have brought disparate groups of people together in a difficult issue. How did you personally provide leadership in the situation, and what was the outcome?
The first thing that comes to mind, about 3 or 4 years ago, we initiated a new evaluation system across the district. And so we were hitting some road bumps and we were having some challenges. And so the EA president and her team said, would you be willing to come and meet with our committee? I said, well, definitely. Let's talk about how we can be collaborative. And so I was in Lansing for the day, and I came back and I pulled up to the high school and I see all these cars. Wow, there must be a basketball game tonight. And I walk in and nope, I find that there are about 85 EA members ready to discuss somewhat, ready to talk about the evaluation system and what's working and what's not. And they were not in a good way. And so I led the discussion. We had very open dialogue about what was working and things that were not working well. And from that challenging opportunity, we put together an ERC, an evaluation review committee, and we selected people from both the management side, the administrator side, and also the union side, and we've continued that to this day. And so we have found a way to make a rough situation much better, and again, a focus on what's best for teaching and learning. Coaching teachers, not being fearful of the evaluation tool, but this is a process, and how do we build in professional learning were some of the things that we were missing. But quite honestly, they wanted to be heard. And so that was one opportunity. When I first started, I wanted to share this one too as it came to mind, is the transportation. Those are hard-working individuals. I've done probably every job in the district to drive a bus, and I don't think I could do that. But when I first started in human resources 6 years ago, things were so bad. The supervisor came in and the president of the union, they sat almost back to back in my office. They were not talking. They wanted to file multiple grievances, but they did not have processes and how are we going to communicate and how are we going to do business? How are we going to resolve issues? And I looked at both of them, and I looked at the clock, it's 9 o'clock, I said, we're not leaving here today until we find a way forward. When I said that, they both looked at me like, it's gonna be a long day. And I thought, this could take a while. Now, I think we spent about 3 or 4 hours together. But the purpose of that was to say, hey, this is not working, this is not right for our employees, this is not good for our kids getting on buses, people are not happy about their jobs. What processes are we gonna put in place that will help us move forward? And we put in multiple layers of processes that really help move us forward. And then what I would do, for about the next year or two, I met with them every 3 to 4 weeks to check in on how those things were going. And so that was a difficult situation. I really was not sure how we were going to resolve that, but I knew that we had to start at the top, and we had to find those options. And it was a little bit of a risk to say, we're not gonna leave this room until we find the best way forward. But that ultimately helped turn the tide.
Please explain how you've improved student achievement in a previous position. Be specific. We are looking to hear about the situation, the objective you set out to accomplish, the actions you took, and the outcomes.
One of the things that I think I feel very strongly, that culture, the data points that drive our decision-making need to be clearly defined for all the people that are involved. So I kind of look at it as a stairway approach. The first stairway is, how do we do things around here? That is, what are the processes that we have in place? What's the people, the systems, and so forth? Then the next piece, which is critically important, I found very quickly as an instructional leader, as a principal. What is your tier 1 approach? Your tier 1 is what you should expect every student is benefiting from. What are those processes, those steps in place? And you would think, oh, we do all those things, but unless you're talking about it and you're very thoughtful in saying, these are the things we're going to do. We're going to ensure that these things, in my building was 8 pieces that were happening, were indeed happening. After that, on the next stair level, you have to look at the data. Now, I believe in education, we are data rich. We're sometimes information poor, and what I mean by that is we have all this data. Any teacher we could call and say, would you bring in your data? They would just probably fill the table. But the question is, what are you doing with that data? Are you using a professional learning community to review what's working and what's not? When you look at the data, the tier 1 approach should be evident. After you know that the tier 1 pieces are working, then after you review the data, then you look at the tier 2 and the tier 3, the multi-tier systems of support. So we had very much a pyramid that we could look at that very much clearly defined all of the pieces that we did for students. And I can tell you that when we put those things in place, when I had tough conversations with teachers, that we were responsible for all kids being successful. I was passionate about that as a teacher, I was passionate about that as a principal, and I'm still passionate about that in the work that I do today. That is why we're here. And we have to have a firm belief that every student can be successful, and that's not always the case. So you have to have that as part of your culture. So when you have your tiered system of support in place, then those kids will fit in one of those places. I am proud to say, through the work that my staff and I did as I was in the last couple of years, we have reduced student failures by 66%. And we had gotten down to a point where we had an at-risk list, a failure list. The students we had on it, I knew the story of every student. Those were the most challenging, and we were putting things in place to help those students be successful. That was some of the best work that I did as principal. And so, as in leadership positions since then, again, the focus should always be on the student learning and the success.
Thank you. Tell us about your experience with collective bargaining and fostering productive relationships with kids.
Well, I've had a lot of experience. I have bargained over 30 contracts in 6 years. Most involved very little to no increases, and I spoke about the time when there were actually concessions. I went through that as a building principal. I had those concessions. So I experienced what it was like going home with less money than I made a year or two before. And the reason I say that is, it's important that we walk in the shoes of those that we work with and that serve our kids. Nothing else could have prepared me better than actually experiencing that same feeling as our staff did. So as you can imagine, through bargaining, they were not always real keen to say and hear that there was no money. And so again, we would look at what were the options. I'll give you the one experience. A couple years ago, we worked with the teachers union, and we initiated interest-based bargaining, which was a very time-intensive process, but we really had an opportunity to listen to where they were at, where things have been even before I was in the position, and what were some of the options going forward. And I think it's very important, and I've learned, you gotta listen, and you'll learn, and then you can lead. So when you listen to the interest-based bargaining, it's very much you're telling stories about what's going on in the district, true things. You listen and look for those opportunities. But I can tell you that through that bargaining process, I didn't have $1 of new money to spend. I was not authorized by the board to have $1 of new money. So what we had to do in a collaborative fashion is take a look at what was represented in that schedule. And as you can imagine, many millions of dollars were in that schedule, in that EA schedule. The question is, what could we do with that to make everyone happy and to basically pass a contract? And so we had to work through that. We were innovative in some of the things that we did, and the innovative piece that we came up with was a formula. And the formula was based on enrollment, based on medical costs, based on those types of 3 or 4 things. And we said, we don't have any money, but we're in this together. And the theme came, we are in this together. And we're looking for a 3-year contract, and if the formula triggers, then you will get money on schedule. And I'm sure they were happy, as I was happy, to show that last fall the trigger or the formula was triggered, and we were to put money on schedule for the first time in years. The reason I say that is so important is, again, we're in this together. So when we sit down in some of our collaborative discussions, when we're talking about healthcare, when we're talking about staffing, which is the biggest cost item in our district, everyone's got a vested interest. Again, how do we define a win-win and help them understand the why? If we spend $500,000 in staffing here, if it's good for kids, we're gonna all agree on that, but just know that we're spending out of the same pot of money, the general fund. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight is we have a financial review committee that is represented very much with the teachers and the administration, and we sit down twice a year to go over the budget. Now, we know that a lot of that happens in board meetings, but what happens in this room is that we can really dig into it. If they have questions, that they can really come to understand the ins and outs and what's going on with our dollars. And as you know, just like this district, I think we're on a $100 million budget. It's a lot of money, but we certainly have a lot of places where that goes. So the more they understand, the better the process and the better the results.
Scott, what is your approach to improving instruction?
I talked about, you want to make sure that you ensure alignment with state standards. So the M-STEP is here. I know we hear some things that it's going away. Well, it's not. But when you take a look at improving instruction, you need to take a look at the data. So the first place is in the classroom, right? So if you're in the classroom and I'm teaching, you're looking at informal classroom assessments. What's going on every single day? You're looking to see how is the curriculum connecting with the kids, how is that working? The next step is the formal classroom assessments, where you have quizzes or tests that are weekly or every couple of weeks. Then you really need to have district common assessments in place. Now you're starting to see, is your district curriculum hitting the marks? When you're looking at that in a common way across the district, elementary, middle school, high school. And again, you can't do that without the professional learning communities I talked about. Because teachers are very protective of what's going on in their classrooms. And they're not always eager to share data and really look at that in an analytical way. And quite honestly, principals will hold back. So again, you've got to build that professional learning community. Then you'll have district benchmarks after the common assessments, benchmarks. Is the growth happening that we're expecting that it is? And then comes the end step. So you can see, again, it's a stairway to how are you preparing kids to be successful. But if you're not consistent with that practice across the district, you're going to have scores, and we've experienced this in Huron Valley, that are not tight. Best practice shows that the tighter your scores are, the tighter your curriculum is, the way that you're assessing, and the way that you're teaching and delivering instruction. So you want to have that tight score, and you've got to start somewhere. I can tell you, years ago, my middle school colleagues, we had 4 middle schools at the time, we did work for many years very collaboratively to work on our practices, see what worked and what didn't, and I was very pleased that our scores got very tight. And we had different populations at different buildings. Again, I would say, we have to believe all kids can learn, no matter the home they come from, because they are dependent on us believing in them for them to be successful. And that needs to be very much that we're passionate about that.
Share an example of how you've applied a creative or innovative approach to district management or resource generation.
So I talked about the financial review committee. That's been very helpful, and I've talked about the formula. And what I want to make sure I did mention about the formula is the formula now is in every contract, in every handbook, from COPE members, myself, all the way down. We're in this together. Same numbers, same expectation. But the other piece, which was a financial challenge, was when we switched over to an 80-20 format. When we went from hard cap, went from 80-20 to a hard cap. That has to do with insurance costs. The reason I bring that up is we worked with the union and all the other groups in a very collaborative process, a review on the best way forward on that. And what we found was that if we offered our employees options, if we educated them, did professional learning on what their benefits were and what they were costing, because as you know, probably a lot of people don't know what the benefits cost, but that is a cost to the bottom line. So again, if they understand the why, if they understand the dollars that are behind that, maybe we can find some reasonable solution forward. And one of the things that our board and the superintendent's team believe is when we hire people, this is going back to hiring and retention, they don't come in and say, what kind of benefits do you have? Because they know we're going to have pretty reasonable benefits, right? They're looking at that salary schedule. So our goal was, if we're putting a lot of money into benefits, what is that going to limit us to do on that salary schedule? And that is where we attract and retain, right there. So you've got to have a real good balance on how are you doing that. And so the result of what we did through this whole process is our teachers, which is a lot of work on our department, are offered 5 different plans. Now, I'm not recommending that because that's a lot to oversee. Remember, years ago, everyone had one plan to choose from, and we would manage that. But as people become consumers and make good decisions based on dollars, they're given options on what type of level of benefits do they need, and it's different for every individual and every family. So we worked through that. It was very helpful to our resources, but that was really an innovative approach too, again, to bring all of that together and find the best way forward.
have different ideas about which decisions need to be made. We agree that some difficult decisions do need to be made here in Waterford, and that both the process for that decision-making and the follow-through will be key. Can you please share with us an experience that best illustrates your process for leading a district through a difficult decision, as well as your practices related to follow-through after the decision was made?
First word comes to mind is you gotta have a vision. You gotta have, I believe, a strategic plan. You have a strategic plan in the district that is community-driven, that is developed with input from all of your stakeholders, then the tough decisions, a lot of times that have to be made, are part of that, because that might be one of your action areas might be finances. It may be instruction. But if you bring everybody in a room and you work through that, then you're following a community-driven blueprint. That's the first thing. Because I learned when we went to close an elementary, there was no vision, there was no plan, and that is not the way to go. You just can't do that. When we came back with Dr. Karate and had a cost containment plan, we connected it to the things we were doing in the district with our strategic plan, it went much better. Now, I will tell you that our biggest test, whenever you close a building, because I've been through it with a middle school, and I've been through it with an elementary, is that first day of school in September. Do you take care of all the kids because they're in new schools, they're meeting new friends? That's the data that the community's gonna look at. So once you get through the processes, you've gotta make sure that you follow up and that it's done well. And I am pleased to say that we did that on both fronts. I was heavily involved with, assigning students to schools where they were going. We worked with the enrollment team on that. But also, I don't want to forget about, you have to take care of the staff. You are really changing where teachers have been maybe sometimes their entire career. And the grade levels and the colleagues that they've worked with. So I worked very hard to make sure that we found win-win situations for all of our staff members. That's all the way from the principal to the teachers, the custodians, the paraprofessionals. And so I took that very, very seriously, that we would take care of our staff, then we take care of our kids through those processes, and the first day of school, we begin that is the way to do that. And you stick with your commitments. One of the things we've said, if we had to move teachers, we would not be transferring them in the future years, if you've already made a move. And so you stick with the commitments that you made when you started a tough process, and you will build trust through that. And people know what to expect.
Thank you very much.
I know you mentioned it a couple times, especially in your opening statement. So I'm just wondering if you want to talk a little bit more about your experience in right-sizing.
Yeah, right-sizing a school district is difficult. There's no way around that. That's not something that anybody really wants to do. But again, you have to look at where your resources work. What type of class sizes do you have? Because if I have if my daughter's in a classroom that's within contract limits of 27 or 28, yet my friend's daughter is in a classroom of 18, sometimes it just doesn't work out well. So we have to look at what is the best way to utilize our resources. But I would say it's got to be driven with a vision, with lots of communication, and taking care of your students and staff. But right sizing is something that our community has realized. We've been through 3 or 4 building closures. We've done some repurposing, as some of the work I think you've done here as well. So we're not unlike other districts. The student enrollment in Michigan is not trending upward, it's downward. So we look at those tough decisions and choices are things that we have to do, and that's what leaders do. And again, we want to take care of the kids. If it's about our students, our staff and community, and you keep that as a vision, then you want to make sure that all students have the same opportunities in every setting. So as buildings get smaller and have fewer kids, a lot of times it's harder to give them the same opportunities that students in other buildings have. And so we've seen that both times. So that's something else that I can add to this question. You look at the opportunities that our students have, we want to make sure that that's consistent and the same across the district.
Describe your approach to communication. What evidence of this approach will we find from talking with stakeholders in your current district?
I think anyone you would talk to, they know they get the truth from me. It may not always be the answer they want to hear or the answer I want to deliver, but I'm truthful, no matter who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to somebody over at the football game on Friday night, or I'm talking to somebody in my office on Monday morning, they're gonna get the same answer. You build trust, and you're able to build synergies through when people know what they expect to get from you. It's gonna be consistent, it's gonna be transparent, and I'm gonna be above reproach in that. That people know what they're going to get. Doesn't mean they always like that answer. And as leaders, all of us have to realize that folks will try us and ask different questions or the same questions different ways. And if you're not able to stand firm on what you believe in, on what you're trying to deliver or where you need to be, you're gonna be all over the place. And you cannot lead in that setting. So, being consistent, and again, communication should all go back to what's on that community-driven strategic plan, that blueprint. Because it will all align. And so that gives us all cover. If we know the things that we have to do are tough decisions, but we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the results we're looking for, and how are we gonna be better on the other end. So communication, you look at a lot of different things that you're looking at, but people are looking to make sure that you're gonna be honest with them. Now, people are people. They all want the answer they want, and we know that, right? When they come in to talk with us, they'll bend my ear on this, or what do you think about this person or that? You need to be above reproach, and that's critically important. Above reproach, consistent in the directions that things need to go.
Describe your vision of strong district-wide curriculum program.
So we talked a little bit about that. You gotta have a stair level approach. What are the processes that you have in place, looking at your culture, your tier 1 supports, the data points that you are reviewing, and then when you review those data points, the MTSS, the multi-tier systems of supports that are gonna be put in place. You gotta have a process and a system, as I'm sure you do, and we've continued to make sure that we have that in place, because that's gonna inform the decision-making of when things are not going well. And we've gotta be sometimes a little quicker in education and responding to the needs and things that are not working out well. And we wanna make sure that we're not putting more on our teachers' plates than need to be. So that strong curriculum, you gotta have your tight standards, and then, if you're teaching in the classroom, what can we be loose on a little bit? So those tight standards are important, but then the teachers want to have some creativity and some things that they can do a little bit different, put their mark. Being a teacher is really almost like an artist. You're working with kids, and you're working with malleable minds and futures. So we don't want to make it so tight that they can't be creative, but we've got to have tight standards across the district. We need to make sure that it's research-based. That's something that I haven't mentioned tonight. I've been in education 25 years. I can do a lot of things by my gut, and I'm sure a lot of us can. But it should be research-based, because that will give a firm foundation to not just what I'm thinking or what the board is thinking, but what are we doing across the district. This is the research. If we know in the research in this book, The Advantage, why organizational health trumps everything else, then we know that there's examples here that the health of an organization is the foundation where everything else comes from. And if you're working in, let's say, an elementary classroom, you know the readers, writers workshop is key. We know that best practice is Readers Writers Workshop, 120-minute block. Now, I can say that we don't have that in every school, but that is a goal of how are we going to get there to provide the teachers the opportunities to get the curriculum completed and the kids learning where we need them to be. So the professional learning comes into play as that as well. And you're gonna have strong professional learning. I'm gonna go back to what I started with, the professional learning communities. The PLCs have to be strong. If they are not, I've experienced teachers will come in, they will talk about what happened on the weekend, what they're doing next weekend, and oh, those kids, oh, they're driving me crazy. I wish they would, can they learn that? Oh, okay, time to go. So a professional learning community, on the other hand, would have those relationships built. They would come in, they would have the data, they would be looking at the curriculum, there would be things set up that this is how we operate. And the instructional leader in the building needs to make sure that those professional learning communities are being focused on that and being results oriented. One of the things that I did at, when I was a middle school principal is we had department action plans that aligned to the things I've talked about tonight. Our curriculum, the things we wanted to see with the growth in the students, and also connected at the time was the meat, but it would be the end step. And they have to be willing to make the commitments, and the leadership has to be willing to step out and expect that those commitments will be followed through. Because if something's not working, then you can look back and say, why is this not working? It reminds me of another process. If you've got a black box versus a glass box approach. So very quickly, without going too far into that, a black box would say, well, we did this professional learning, we sent teachers here, there, and we did this presentation, and look, our kids improved. But you gotta dig a little bit deeper to say, what exactly did we do? What worked? Because if that is what's working here, then we want to have that happening in other settings. A glass box would show and be more detailed about what exactly did we do. And a professional learning community has to be very upfront in talking about those things. So they know the processes, they know the expectations we're looking for, and they can discuss them. Otherwise, I used to call it in the building, it's loose coupling. You don't really know. And sometimes in education, I was guilty of that earlier on, you don't really know, you're going by your gut. That glass box approach, you know what you've done, you know what's working, you know what's not. And that allows you to make the adjustments on the other side, to continue to help kids be successful. Because as we know, the M-STEP scores is what people are looking at. Those parents and families that are looking to come to this district or to go to a school of choice, they're gonna look at what's being published. So again, we have to be comfortable having those discussions. And look at continuous improvement. That's really the way to go. When I get in trouble with my wife, I say, hey, let's talk about continuous improvement. You know, how can we learn from what I did wrong, and how can we make this better? So it's not a cop-out, it's about how do you continue to grow. And in education, we tend to want to be type A people, we have all the answers. We don't always have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers by ourselves. So that goes back to the work that I've done for years. It's a collaborative approach. It's a collaborative approach where you're sharing ideas, you're sharing the data, you're sharing people's experiences, and then the leader's got to say, this is what we're going to do based on this research, and then we're going to look at the glass box approach to see, does this actually work? And we know what we've done. If you know what the inputs are, you know why you're getting the outputs. If you don't really know the inputs and it's a little shaky, you don't really know why you're getting it, and that's going to cause some incongruence across the district.
Leading a school district requires a superintendent to inspire staff members to the highest levels of performance and also hold them accountable. Provide an example of how you have inspired staff members while also holding them accountable.
One of the things that I initiated this year as the Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services, we have a newer maintenance and operations supervisory team. So I've been going to every building with them, walking every building, and the purpose of the walks is under our theme of ownership, partnership and ownership. And what we do from that is we walk the building to see some of the things that pop out, whether it's lights or it's some repairs that are needed. But the expectations are that we are gonna put our best foot forward in every situation. And so where that helps the process is now that I've been through 80 or 85% of the buildings this year, already, I was at a building Monday morning, and all of these things were done. So these things we were finding in other buildings were done. And I said, John, we can't really find a whole lot here. I said, have you been talking to your colleagues? Yes, he had. So when I talked in the beginning of the year about partnership and ownership, you can see people taking that on, taking it seriously. This is the expectation. And when we've gone into buildings and we do a report and we said, what are our commitments? The commitments that we expect from the custodial team there, the commitments that our supervisors will be a part of, and what is my commitment to them, we do a follow-up report. So now it's in writing. We've done the visit, we've had the conversation, now it's in writing. Now we expect everyone to be accountable for that. But we're working together. And what I said, it's not really to come here and point out things that aren't right. It's about how are we gonna make things better together. And it's really a change in culture without going into that than what had been done a few years back. So I'm really working to set up our new supervisors, set them up for success. But again, consistent theme tonight, a collaborative approach with expectations of excellence. That's what our community deserves, that's what they expect, and that's what our students should see every single day.
Can you tell us, what is it about this job specifically that appeals to you?
I think whenever you apply to be a superintendent, you need to really take a look at the community and those, the opportunities and the challenges. And there's no doubt that I've done that the last couple of months. This community, from what I've been able to garner, is a wonderful community. You have wonderful facilities, and you have a wonderful opportunity in just the community itself in terms of the 34 lakes and the opportunities for our students and families. It's been built on a blue-collar background. I think it's changing, so we need to make sure that we're changing with the expectations of our parents, no matter where you're at on the economic spectrum. But I came from a blue-collar community, South Redford. I grew up there, and that's what I kept coming back to. That community, those teachers, those neighbors, those experiences helped me to be who I am today. And if you take a look at that, that's what a school district should be. It should be about building opportunities for everyone, no matter where you're at on the academic profile. It's about building an academic profile up. It's about taking something and leaving it better than when you found it. And this district has some challenges. So does Huron Valley, and we're working through those. So does Traverse City and Port Huron and every other district. The question is, what are we going to do about those challenges, and how are we going to come together to make things better for our students, our staff, and community? Those opportunities is what really excites me about what's going on here in Waterford and what the potential is. And I'm just being very honest with you when I look at that. And I think anytime those of us that are interested in being superintendent, some people think you really want to do that. Yeah, because in the leadership role, you can make a difference. I loved being a teacher. I loved being Oak Valley Middle School principal. I did that for 12 years. But what I've noticed is you can have an influence when you move up into a leadership role, whether it's superintendent or a teacher or a head custodian, you can influence those things that are happening to help improve the systems for those people in which you serve. So I'm very excited about those opportunities, and I look forward to continuing to talk with you about that. But I think the potential in this community is limitless.
Well, we certainly appreciate your interest in this position. As we wind down, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, just a couple. I wanted to just, again, come back to where we started. My experience is somewhat unique because I started as a teacher. I have moved up the ranks, and as I think I said earlier tonight, It's important that you've walked in the shoes of those that you're serving. And when you're a servant leader, including the transformational leadership I talked about, if you're a servant leader, you try to understand where people are. You step in the gap for our employees because we want our teachers and our staff to step in the gap for our kids. So you really have to understand what's going on. And I think through my 25 years experiences and some of the things we didn't talk about tonight, I have that. And I take that very, very seriously. I have a proven track record, and the time didn't allow it tonight, but I have a proven track record certainly as an instructional leader, in the multiple hats and positions I've had at the central office, and that's really what you should be judged on. Where are the successes and how have you worked with people? The strategic planning, I think, is critically important. When I was tapped back in 2004 for the first time to be a strategic planner facilitator for the district, I saw the power of bringing the community together to say, well, we have some challenges, but where are the opportunities to really grow where we want to be at? And so I would bring to this district that vast experience of not going through one plan, but I co-facilitated 2 plans, and also was a key part in the current strategic plan that we have now. Again, you got to make sure that you have measurable outcomes. And I would finish on this. I think my career has been based on the foundation of trust, relationships, and transparency. I don't want to mistake and have anyone thinking that tough decisions can't be made. You make the tough decisions in the right way, you take care of people, and that is the best way forward, because we're a people business.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate your interest again. I'm sure you know we had 4 interviews last night. We have 3 tonight. Conclusion of that, we're going to meet, deliberate, and hopefully decide to call back for our second round of interviews next week. If children, we'll be meeting after that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
With that, we'll have about a 10-minute recess, and then we'll have our second meeting.
Drive up the towel.
A couple kids said he's like you've eaten all of the cookies.
She only said it when I came
I'm serious, you know it, Donna.
Not messing around.
I don't have time to mess around.
During time.
Hold on. That is absolutely right.
Okay, well, it'll happen. Any other forms for me back here? Thank you very much. So I already had your forms? We're good here in forms?
What I talked about, what I talked about. After I saw myself, I'm like,
next to interview is a familiar face, Bill Holbrook.
Well, welcome, Mr. Holbrook. Thank you for joining us and being with us today. We certainly appreciate your interest in the position. All the board members are going to ask questions. It will be a round robin format. I will start and we'll continue this way. So all of the questions have been asked. So with that, we'll start off. Please tell us what has prepared you to be the next superintendent of the Waterford School District?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I was the internal candidate. It's very difficult. You know my strengths, but you also know my shortcomings. But you also know that I've been a leader in this district for 20 years during what's probably been the most challenging of economic times in the state of Michigan, at points in the country, and certainly with the loss of enrollment for Waterford. My experience has been tried by fire with everything that we've dealt with over these last 20 years. As to refine my abilities to make the proper decisions for the district. I've been making those decisions for a long period of time. As you know, I don't want to repeat the cover letter and everything else about my previous experience at PricewaterhouseCoopers and knowing the knowledge of where we were with the auto industry and the difficulties that we face years later with the employment and the loss of our tax base through the manufacturing efficiencies. I'm up for the task. I've been up for the task. I've been doing all of this for a long period of time, pulling the rabbit out of the hat to get us through another year and work through all of our difficulties. You know that my decisions have been fact and data-based. You know that they've been student-focused. Our class sizes are still the same today as they were 20 years ago. And probably more importantly, I have long-term trusted relationships with this board, staff, and the community over all these years. So with that, we'll go ahead and just start with questions and go from there.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Trustee Joslin, and then we'll proceed in order.
Provide an example of a situation that accurately reflects your leadership style. Then, describe your leadership style and explain how you came to embrace it.
I'm a servant, hands-on leader. It isn't out of the question to be on a roof one morning looking at an air conditioning unit up there with John Kegovich, or actually evaluating the roof conditions, coming down from the roof, heading to the finance department to work through a difficult journal entry, and then at lunchtime, getting in the, which you'll see some pictures in a little while, the USDA Power Panther mascot outfit to be with kids in the elementary. And then turn around later that night and give a very critical budget presentation to the board with difficult decisions that have to be made. That is not out of the question or how I show my leadership and my staff follow accordingly. I have direct interaction with my staff face to face. I value the input from all sides. I don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room, and frankly, I'm not. But I do look for the win-win situations. My leadership style is backed by integrity and trust. I know those are words that people say quite a bit, but at the end of the day, I've been the point person to reduce over $100 million in this district for over 20 years. By doing that, making those budget cuts, they were made with compassion. By doing what we did compassionately, and that's through attrition and so forth, this room would be full of people who wouldn't want me to be here today. They know that they trust me, and I have the integrity to make those decisions, and I've been doing that for years. And finally, as a leader, backing of this is I don't know if you realize, if you've done the numbers, as far as I'm the only employee outside of possibly Amy for the finance position that has been audited. This board hires an outside party to make sure I do my job. This board has spent over $750,000 over my career, making sure that I've done my job. So I don't think that any employee in the district or any of the other candidates have had that level of scrutiny to be a leader. Thanks.
Based on, not necessarily just your research of the district, but you know as well, how would you go about cultivating a productive relationship with and amongst the Board of Education?
Communication is key. I like to have face-to-face conversations and communication from the purpose of making sure there isn't a misunderstanding. We're all fighting for the same cause. We're on the same team. We need to listen to what the board's needs are and address them effectively. Issues need to be confronted directly. We need to know everyone's opinion and what your interest is and what the issue is at hand, and then find common ground to work from there to get everybody on the same page. Our conversations need to be professional and fact-based. We need to continue. I love the fact, one of the things that helps out with the relationship with the board is the fact that a few board members are working with the community members heading to Lansing and doing a collaborative effort for funding from the state, or for the school district, from the state that is. And finally, this board knows that I have an open door policy. I have met with many of you on multiple occasions. When you ask to meet with me, I usually block the morning or the afternoon, the entire time, or depending on the subject matter, the whole day. I'm open to have any and every conversation, and you've taken advantage of that multiple times. I've worked for 17 different board members, and on occasion, we talk about board relations, and between the board itself, and with administration. In years past, it wasn't common. It was very common to say, "Send Bill in." They trust him. And I've earned that trust from this board, and you have allowed me and the district to make very difficult decisions based on that trust. I'm very appreciative of the board's unconditional support over these years, and it's kept me going.
Thank you very much.
If you could please describe what your track record is with regard to attracting and retaining school personnel, including instructional staff, especially resources.
Well, first and foremost, and we're working on this right now in negotiations, instructional salaries, they have to be increased. If we're going to retain good staff, we're going to have to do that. We've been redirecting our resources to increase our fund balance because we were below the 5% protocol. We are now at $7 million. We're in good financial stead, and I've said at multiple board meetings that we need to take a pause on growing fund balance and increase our salaries. Our staff love the district. They love the families they work for. They love the professional development and the relationships we have with them. The thing we need to do is come full circle and complete that process by looking for ways to increase their pay. I have an awesome staff. They know I have their back. My countywide reputation has allowed me to attract great staff into the district. And here's my philosophy on staffing. People who work for me, I want to have people that can hurt me. What I mean by that is that they're smarter than me in their given area. If they can't hurt me, they can help me. If they can't help me, they can't help the district. We need to continue our outside relationships. We have some administrators who teach at the university level. When they built that relationship, that rapport with their students, and these are students that their teachers already, they're getting advanced degrees and so forth, but when they build that rapport, it's easier to recruit them because they already have the relationship. Pay is one thing, but relationship is quite another. One of my colleagues has recruited over 57 people over the last 10 years by being a teacher at a university. Finally, I have a proven track record, and you've heard me say this at multiple board meetings, is that I want, whenever we make budgetary reductions and so forth, we do it through attrition. We have to keep up with the pace of the loss of students so that we never get in a bind where we end up having to lay off a mass amount of people. We don't want to be in that position. One of the things we do have going for us when we talk about attracting staff for a district, if any district is in trouble and so forth, they look and see how do they treat their staff, and how do they handle loss of enrollment and loss of teachers? I've been consistent on trying to make sure that we attrition ourselves through this process, and we've done this for years. This is a fair thing to do with staff, and they know it, and they respect it.
Tell us about a situation in which you have brought disparate groups of people together on a difficult issue. How did you personally provide leadership in the situation, and what was the outcome?
So recently, as you go through the process, a lot of times when you're working through construction projects, we have a particular situation where we're at Cooley, and because Cooley's proximity to the lake, it sits up higher, and a lot of the homeowners that are on the lake, they're in a very low-lying area, and they're very concerned about the water. They're very concerned about what our water retention plan is, how water off of the Cooley site, because we're adding parking spaces, we're adding a bus loop, and we're adding different things there, and they want to know how that could impact their area, because they have roads that really bring in the water at a low spot. So we set out, we met with them last week. As I like to say, I like to have face-to-face conversations. I also like to have things up on a board such as this. We had a TV screen for them. We put all of the blueprints and plans and even the schematics. We actually got deep into the schematics to show them the water retention underneath the parking lot, in the runoff, in what would happen in a 10-year flood, and also what would happen in a 100-year flood. In fact, our water retention area down there is built for 2 100-year back-to-back floods. So what we do is we meet with the community, and we're talking about a subject matter as an example. We met with them, and we addressed their concerns, showed the engineering, showed the plan, walked the property, walked them through on the screen, we even showed them where they live, and so forth, and answered all their questions. And we allowed plenty of time to make sure that they were satisfied and they were comfortable with what we were doing before we proceeded any further. Another subject, our high school baseball and softball fields. We started renovations in the fall. Unfortunately, in the fall, we ended up with the heaviest rainfall that we've ever had since the 1800s, so it pushed the project back. Our coaches and our contractors, we brought them in, kept them informed. The coaches and the contractors are odds over the completion, so what we did is we set up these weekly meetings to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Although there may be a timing issue, at least they know and are aware of what is going on. And they know the path of what it's going to take to finish the job. And they also know that we were looking for, although it's temporary inconvenience, my goal all along has always been to get the seniors this year on those fields, because the construction project wasn't really supposed to happen for this season. But the goal is to allow at least that opportunity for seniors to play on that field before their season is over. Thank you.
Please explain how you have improved student achievement in a previous position. Be specific. We're looking to hear about the situation, the objective you set out to accomplish, the actions you took, and the outcomes.
I've worked tirelessly for the last 20 years with the circumstances that we face with loss of enrollment and lack of funding in the state of Michigan. It's been very difficult, and my job has been to make sure that we have all the resources we can put into the classroom. Our class sizes, as I mentioned, are the same size today as they were 20 years ago. We work closely as a team together. In the many areas that we offer in this district, the areas I want to these are just brief examples. One is when we obtained the Safe Schools Healthy Students grant. It was $5 million. Redirecting bond resources when Keith became superintendent to build the STEM lab. And remember, we didn't have the 2016 bond issue at that point in time. We had the 2003, which was the last series of the 2003, which were dedicated resources. So we had to refine our plan and make sure that we could create this STEM lab with the money that was left over, and that was both for Kettering and mine. Spanish programming, the junior kindergarten program. I work closely with the the preschool programming. When it comes to, it's a three-pronged approach. It's GSRP, the Great Start Readiness Program, the Head Start program, and the tuition-based. One of the things we want to make sure for kids is to, if parents, from a tuition-based program, is to make the cost as effective as possible to get their kids into our program. So we redesigned programming in a way that will allow costs to fall under GSRP or in the Head Start so that the tuition doesn't have to be as expensive. Our achievements have been certainly in student growth. Successes are just here recently, just a couple weeks ago, the Kettering music program. SETSEG gave, we had 2 SETSEG Achievement Awards. I don't know if you realize this, we had $8 million in scholarships for the 2018 grants. We had a student that had a full ride, his choice to Stanford or Harvard, obviously he chose Stanford. And as we mentioned at almost every board meeting, what we need to brag about is our students going on to the university level. With all that accomplishment, I do want to go back in time. I want to talk about when this district chose to go with all-day kindergarten. It was quite a task. It was a monumental task. We were going to have to hire 17 teachers. We were going to have to find the space. And more importantly, we were going to have to find the resources to do it. We agreed to do it, but the superintendent came down to my office privately and said, should we be doing this? And I said, absolutely. This is what's right for kids. It's a district-wide initiative. And on a selfish note, a neighboring district that was stealing our kids was really out on a limb financially, and they were using our kids to bail them out. So what I liked about this approach, when we went with all-day kindergarten, it was an opportunity to force them to do the same thing. And ultimately, it drove them into deficit. And it allowed us to retain some of our own kids because things started to look not so healthy over there. And I would like at some point for us to come up with another thing down the road that could put us in a position where we can compete and actually show that we are doing things right. We are on the right path. And we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Tell us about your experience with collective bargaining and fostering productive relationships with unions.
I have excellent relationships with the union. I've had it for years. We have Lori Tunick today, we have Marcy Filigi in the past, and Mark Walton from the way past. Additionally, Mary Creighton, Troy Beasley, great relationships. We're trusted colleagues. We know that we have limited resources. We may have disagreements on how much, but we know that we trust each other as to what the goal is. And my numbers have never been in question. They've always been, the numbers are the numbers. It's a question of how do we want to maneuver the numbers as far as who's going to get what and how. But the numbers have always been trusted. Many of our meetings have been informal. They're referred to as money talks, not as negotiations. We have a very collaborative approach. I lead negotiations for the last 15 years when it comes to the funding and the money and the raises. And we've been doing this with limited resources for a long time, and we have this trusted relationship as far as how we get to where we want to go. I want to do more. I've been saying at the board meetings, we need to take a pause on the growth of the fund balance. We've got our finances in good stead. Now it's time to focus on the teachers and the staff, see if we can do something about that.
Thank you. What is your approach to improving instruction?
Data that is supported by research. Instruction tends to go through a 3 to 5 year cycle where they have different ideas in teaching and so forth, but really we need to focus on what the data is and the data and how to utilize that data based on research. Implement with fidelity our plan, provide our staff with professional development, monitor the results, and make changes as needed. Guided reading is an example. We've had improved growth there. It's in our schools. It's not in a training facility. It's real life examples. with people on board, monitoring and assisting in making improvements on the scene. We need to continue these research-based methods to maintain student success.
Share an example of how you've applied a creative or innovative approach to district management or resource generation.
All right, well, let's get back to the philosophy that I have and that I've been using for the last 20 years to keep us out of the deficit and to grow our fund balance. Sustainability. I know that that's a common thing nowadays we talk about with the environment. Well, it's no different in finance. Everything that we do, we have to decipher, is this a recurring cost? Is this a recurring revenue? Or is it one time only? Either way, you need to assess the situation and make sure that when you commit to something or you're dealing with something, that you're using that philosophy for the long term. You look for grants to pay for things if you can. We've made consolidated positions here. We utilize food service dollars in the maximum way that we can possible, legally. Our special education. When we utilize, when we have the center programs, we're able to move costs in the center programs through administration so that we find other revenue sources that are paid. Center programs, for example, are paid by outside districts. We're a participant in that because we have students in the program, but it really saves us quite a bit of money and allows us to operate more efficiently. We've closed buildings, consolidated routes, reduced operations 30%, but yet, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but our buildings are bigger today than they were 20 years ago. Yes, we've closed, and that's including the closures. It's with all the additions we've done, especially with the high schools. I've used resources. They're like the bond dollars, for example. Now, bond dollars can't be used for operating costs, but you can make improvements for things that are out of the general fund. One of the first things we did with the 2016 bond is that we replaced all of the buses. We're not, almost 30 buses. We replaced them because we were running in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs and maintenance on the existing buses. By replacing those buses, those repair and maintenance costs come out of the general fund. So you use bond dollars, you alleviate pressure on the general fund so that you can reallocate the resources, whether it's in classroom raises or offsetting shortfalls based on loss in student enrollment. The next issue is going to be more complex. I'm going to be very brief about this because it would take pretty much, we're going to need a board study session at some point to discuss what we've been doing, how we've been doing all these years. There's a lot of ideas, and we've done them on renting space, different things throughout the district. But the main thing is you need to concentrate on the funds that you have, and how do you best utilize those. Now, one of the things that we did is we set out a path years ago that, and it's also federal law, that you mainstream kids as much as you possibly can, as long as it's right for the student. So special education students, maybe they have a speech issue or a reading, where they need help in reading. But maybe they'll be okay in social studies, science, and math. You need to mainstream and put them in regular ed and keep them in regular ed. We have over 1,600 special ed students, but yet only 400 FTE, just a little more than 400 FTE. So you can see the difference in the ratio there. The state pays on FTE, and so we obtain a fixed revenue source from the state on special ed costs. That fixed revenue source is reduced by the foundation allowance times the number of FTE that you have. I know we need it up on a screen and it's complicated. But here's what I'm going to tell you. By having more kids in the regular ed classrooms and special ed kids only in the programs that they really need to be in special ed, that has allowed us to free up or reduce that reduction to the fixed special ed revenue to the point of we range between $2 to $2.5 million in excess revenue because of that. Now, years ago, other districts have finally caught up to this, but years ago, we led the forefront on Medicaid. Social workers had to turn in tickets, we had to keep doing all these different forms and so forth. We now generate $500,000 in Medicaid revenue. So between just the special ed and Medicaid alone, there's $3 million that has kept us in good stead. And we talk about sources of funding and looking at things the way we do and managing the resources. Our fund balance today is $7 billion, 7%, is the best it's been in years.
While people may have different ideas about which decisions need to be made, we agree that some difficult decisions need to be made in Waterford. And that both the process for decision-making and follow-through will be key. Can you please share with us an experience that best illustrates your process for leading a district through a difficult decision, as well as your practices related to follow-through after a decision is made?
I'm going to ask to step out of somewhat protocol. This question is best coupled with the next question on finance. Because the example, I would rather lengthy example that when you get into detail where I cover both in this subject. Is that possible?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, we actually were kind of recommending that once before, so that's
Okay.
perfect. That's no problem.
All right, so the next question is about right-sizing the district, just so everybody knows. I've been part of the closure of 6 elementary schools. Since I've been here over the last 19 years, 6 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 alternative high school, and 4 non-instructional buildings. Obviously, these were difficult decisions that we made. They were to rectify budget issues, of course. But I would say this, if we had all the funding in the world, but yet we had an opportunity to operate efficiently where we could turn around and put more dollars back in the classroom, we should take on these challenges at the same time and do it as well. Because it's the right thing. I presented to multiple groups. In fact, we had to be in the PAC because of, in some instances, the community so engaged in the closures that I had to be at the PAC giving presentations and and when I stood at Township Hall, we had standing room only and giving a budget presentation there. The facts were presented, we communicated the problem, too few students, too much overhead. You have the principal's office, the utilities, the custodial, and just the general maintenance on the building. We had to become more efficient, and we had to make things efficient with our teacher-to-student ratios. We explained that, we communicated that, and then we analyzed what buildings we had available. We looked at the capacity, the age, the condition, available resources. If the condition is poor and we needed to improve it, did we have other resources, bond dollars and so forth, to improve the building before we consolidated? We analyzed the building's location. Is it advantageous for the community, the students, the parents, or just the opposite? Is it advantageous for its location? Will it allow for more residential development that'll bring more kids in? Then we got on the road, presented to PTAs, the Rotary, the Optimist Club, and the response has always been, everybody understands that we need to close the building and right-size the district, but it's just not my building. And that's where it gets difficult, and that's where working with the board as a team is critical. We need to support each other as we work with the community and their emotions and address the facts with data. And then finally, once the decision is made and we move forward, we have to plan out and integrate the students and the parents in the new location with welcoming parties, open houses, activities throughout the summer, just to get the kids integrated together. Now, outside of that whole issue of right-sizing and that, I want to step to the side on personnel. This is totally different, but on personnel, and just make sure that we're all on the same page as far as and it's going to sound like a broken record. When it comes to right-sizing, again, I always focus on the fact that as we lose students, we need to reduce our staffing accordingly. It's the fair thing to do, and we've always done it for the most part through attrition. Thank you.
Describe your approach to communication stakeholders in your current position?
As I mentioned earlier, face-to-face is the most effective way. I'd like to see people's facial expressions to see, if we're on the right track, if we're, just to see what we need to do. Of course, for just a board relation, an administrative relation, and community relation type of thing. We'll continue the communications and the FYIs to the board. Our social media use, whether it's Twitter or Facebook page and so forth. Coffee with Keith is one, with the community. It is really good. Kind of jokingly talked about the fact that I'd like to keep that because I'd like to be in touch with the community, but maybe it's bagels with Bill. As you know, I love to communicate through PowerPoint presentations. I've done hundreds of them over the years. And most of, or not most of, but a lot of them the last few years are still on our website. It's a way for the community to see it, initiate questions, and communicate their concerns, or at least just find general data about us. Our transparency website, I have over almost 1,000 pages on our transparency website, so you can find all kinds of data. As I mentioned earlier about the community members in regards to water runoff and concerns, I like to meet with them directly and have that communication. In fact, when they left, they were satisfied and happy with the plan. And they were thankful that we actually met with them face to face and went through the details and spent the time with them to make sure that they were satisfied.
Please describe your vision of a strong district-wide curriculum program.
District-wide curriculum is very critical. Years ago, we were a little bit more independent at the building level and so forth, and we didn't really have a district-wide plan. Things were done inconsistently throughout the district. I know from my office and so forth, we were dealing with lots of little different types of grants and funding for a math program or something like that in the fifth grade, and it was specific to just one building. And with that, when the kids went to a transition year, say going from 5th grade to 6th grade, those kids had to wait around. It's not just bad for the kids, they actually waited around for the kids to catch up. So having a district-wide initiative makes things incredibly consistent. Now, let's take a look at curriculum is dictated by the state. We can implement the how, but not the what. Advanced learners now, in some degrees we can have flexibility. Advanced learners in middle school can get high school credits. High schoolers can have college credits. We have Wayne State on campus. And the flexibility that we have in the CTE programming allows us to do certain things. And what I mean by that is that what's important about a district-wide curriculum is that it needs to be for all students. When we talk about the student that went on to Stanford, or those that are going to go on to a traditional four-year university, that's a certain group of kids that are going to continue to do that. Our curriculum also has to have opportunities for those who are going to take a less traditional path, possibly a trade school or something in that manner. Currently, we have a Durant student that's obtained an internship in a robotics program with a local company. That's wonderful because now that local company is going to provide the training. They are now going to get the middle-class wages or higher, or it also exposes them to greater opportunities down the road when the time comes that they may choose to take a higher level of education.
Leading a school district requires the superintendent to inspire staff members to the highest level of performance and also hold them accountable. Provide an example of how you have inspired staff members while also holding them accountable.
Right. I work with the philosophy tone at the top. My staff trust me, they see me working at every level. They know that I'm actively involved, as I mentioned earlier, on the roof, working with financial data, working with parent working with a parent that can't make their child care bill. They see me working at all levels, and that I will continue to do. I lead by example, and my staff have followed that. If we have a shortage on aides on the bus, my administrative staff have been on buses to fill in that aide role just because they know that the job has to get done. Anything that's ever happened in a crisis situation where we have a pipe leak or anything like that, our staff are on it, no questions asked. It's all hands on deck, and they go and handle it. They see my love for the district, and they have a love for the district. Of course, on occasion, we've had to have discussions on areas of improvement and had to handle things. They know they still have their back. Hopefully, we never get to a plan where you have to get on a plan of assistance and possible termination. We've had that in the past. Actually, we've had it in just the last few months. Don't like getting in those situations, but at the same time, it has to be done. But staff and I work very well together, and they see me leading the district and doing everything I would do. They know that I don't expect them to do something that I wouldn't do.
Bill, what is it about this job specifically that appeals to you?
I love Waterford. I've dedicated my life to Waterford. I've been fighting since day one. I want to be part of the complete story of Waterford. It's a wonderful feeling knowing that you're making the difference in students' lives, even under these incredible financial difficulties. Still making a difference. I love finding the resources to make things happen, and the student success. We're on the right path, and I want to complete that.
Well, as we went down, again, certainly appreciate you, the interest in this position. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Yes. Once again, obviously, thank you for this opportunity. Several district-wide decisions have to be made in a very short period of time. I have the trusted relationships to make those changes. I have the in-depth organizational knowledge to make any change we do successful. I've been working, you know, that I've been in the forefront of financial stability and sustainability. The board knows that I make the decisions based on fact and data. The district needs somebody to be here long-term. I've been here long-term, and I will be here long-term. Staff already have the relationship and know me. I have the proven ability to keep the district in the right direction for all students. Since I became the assistant superintendent, we have $1 million fund balance. We now have a $7 million fund balance in a very short period of time. Our infrastructure is being modernized at a fast pace. With capital improvement dollars, we've improved 3 elementaries. We have 3 more on deck. We did complete renovations at both middle schools. Our athletic fields are, they're just the star of the county. People are jealous that people are now taking tours of our facility to see where we're at, and they also are taking tours of our elementary buildings and how we've renovated them and added the multi-purpose rooms. On top of that, we've had so many unforeseen projects done, whether it's roofs, boilers, electrical, plumbing. What I'm ultimately trying to do is bring dignity back to the district. Not only for the district, for the staff, and for the students. I will work hard to continue the increases in student growth, district restructuring for more wages, more wage increases, and continue building improvements. Now, most of you see me as a guy in a suit and tie at all the meetings. They're usually high-level meetings and professional and everything. But within this packet, I have some examples of some of the things we talked about. If you flip to the very back, last 2 pages, I wanted to show you a side of me with staff and kids. So when I mentioned that I was the blue Power Panther for the U.S. Department of Agriculture for our food service program, that's me in the outfit with all the elementary kids all around me. I love it. I love being part of them. being and having fun. That was an awesome day, and all the other days that I've been the Howard Panther. Then with obviously this picture with the kids from Pierce. Another picture is me getting ready for the Wombat outfit. Some of the I've had incredible times with our Life Tracks program where we're playing hockey. They actually do have a hockey team, floor hockey team. I played hockey with them. I want to get back to those days. It's been a while since we've done some of these things. And then what was really fun is the Durant, and we really need to get back to this as well, is the Durant put a challenge to administration that we would have the macaroni challenge where who could have the tallest pyramid. And both with the Durant pyramid and the Life Tracks floor hockey, I do want a rematch. We've lost both. So, all in all though, I want to thank you for this opportunity again. I haven't let you down in the past, and I won't let you down as your superintendent. Thank you.
Well, I think we had 4 candidates last night. We have 3 tonight. At the end of the third, the board will meet here in open meeting and discuss, and we would like to have come back for a second interview next week. And Joseph and Donna will be in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we start this one over time, and then you'll have a longer break.
All right, so when 5 minutes,
Well, I mean, if we just,
or you just want to go?
no, I mean, you guys need to change the law right there.
Okay.
So maybe 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, so we'll start, all right, so we'll recess for about 5-6 minutes, and then we'll get going with our third applicant. No, okay.
Thank you. We know if we're talking. You're right. Like, really, like, for real. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
I know, I think I've heard the reputation. I noticed today, and then having, especially just a lot of Hilton wants program or because whatever the teachers or secretary doesn't feel like they attach their voices heard.
So I don't know.
We'll kill whatever it is.
Well,
Get myself in.
it's a bummer.
And gotten to the point where put off our shop. It's like a little different where it's like, we made a meeting, this meeting's gonna take place after school on this day. Okay, that's when the meeting's gonna happen. My phone got every time I was like bad because he didn't.
I love it though.
You do it with different people, but if you had to be embarrassing in front of the staff, I gave you 2 weeks notice. You chose not to be there because it was after school. You have to sit out. You can't tell me you know anything. I just did this. You had 2 weeks. I set it up. You wanted it. So you could be part of it. You chose not to show up. Sit out. And or another one of those.
Like, why don't they do it? Honestly, why don't they go try to do it? It's like the fourth grade. Why are they doing it?
Good idea. You sure do when staff meetings. You tell me all the time. You tell my assistant all the time. I know. And that's a true worst case scenario. But with other ones, but some of them are also they're just pretending they're a kid. They're Papa Bear. They shouldn't be talking to me like this. I'm just trying That's all.
Maybe you can find it here. This is like reread it. I don't know which one.
How important was lunch?
Yes. Yeah.
Every single one.
No, I wanted somebody else.
Today, I cannot take your
There you go.
You will not see that
That's the part I like about being just follow me when you leave the school. Just follow me.
First
The
semester.
milkman was just, he's like, I'll be this.
So now
So now you're in the van, you're in a truck.
but doesn't know what to do.
How do I go? What's the best way to go?
That's why I
I know what she said. You know how quiet it is?
So what he thinks.
I'm gonna right. Traffic light that is.
Okay, it should be perfect. What's appropriate to make as a count?
If they're
Sorry. Step all over.
really trying to
Forever.
no problem.
We're under protection.
If they're not trying to make it
Letting you walk on the rest. Yeah.
he is now. We actually on succession that is signed by every teacher every day. And he has to put test or assessment or anything like that. He has to put it down, and all the teacher has to do is sign it. So every day we can see what's going on. That's the thing. Until it shows up in the grade book, you don't know what's going on. Other than that, it's showing up on that parent portal, and you go, oh shit, you had a test, or remind staff the day of or the day before, and the night of, that there's a staff. Yeah, right.
Well, they could be just looking at, they have their forms.
I know they were looking.
Okay. Yep. Same. That sounds about right.
Like I have like 30 times. I was just never responded. Like in our new gym, our purpose room, I love it, but it's like so like I run out in the hallway and try to grab something and I check and it's like it's just the way that I have that
So you're just like he's the one right now who's curious if he gets a job. And my daughter lays asked that he needs to get a job. And won't. I'm like, you gotta flip my car.
Yes, we are willing to do the figure eight, yeah. Go to actually, we would
No, I know. But the next day, the next day, he wore that out for me. So I didn't know that they had. I had no idea. We were down there he wanted to go in there.
What happens to
And I look
No, you were serious. I could feel like you don't hold over that. You're like, everybody else is here. Like,
starts for applications. I said, I am told you there are more flipping colors.
sorry, when you see like her kids on. So we're ahead of
why don't you go to, you know. Really literally that is so awesome. Mhm. Really? I do have to shower really. I'll try.
You've been here the whole night? Yes, sadly.
If I do back to back.
Yes.
It's fine.
No, so Baker Fullerton, and they had a half an hour, this is a half an hour break. It's going on 40 minutes. And then you're gonna decide from there, so. Yeah. Like Coach Durant, that's how visible and different.
It's in my driveway.
No, it's not.
Well, I saw you at that, you were familiar with it, was negative.
I've been here for the previous 2 weeks.
Are you really?
I've been in there every single
Like you get part of it. She's like that was like
mistakes.
like you're not like there's no
in my impression, they keep on really like what you're selling. You've done a great job in the district for 1,000 kids. We've got 1,800 in our high school. So that's my big thing for this time. I've done a little politic, call it, talking. Like the one that was things like Saturday. I was looking at my monthly basis on my personal account. He is a great guy. He has staff, but basically, there are more teachers in this building than there are in this It's a stepping stone. It's a step backwards. Absolutely. You've got to have somebody that's got experience. The safety. Number one. So I worked with Scott and when I was in here, I worked with them as principal in Oak Valley when I was part of the alternative programs there. I've seen them do well. It doesn't have super
We've been waiting for. I don't know if it's all true, but.
Yeah, no, he mentioned multiple times about, transparency, and he really has brought that to the
in the road.
No.
You should just get on with it. I'm sure we have enough kids.
I'm looking at you to see if you look like you're getting close to that point of having gone through the feedback forms or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jill, please consider this your 5-minute.
Right, yeah.
Personal teacher.
You're like, that's your punishment for running it again. Just look there. But I'm gonna try to put all these pictures. Gotta get on that way.
And again, just personal.
I was trying to be funny. He doesn't understand. Should stay off that Facebook.
Yeah. Good. Good. But it says something. If a district that's this big, and it can
She's like, it always comes up as timeline, and yet like twice a day sometimes.
First off, not a very large
At a time.
to just narrow it down.
And she was like, this food, and oh, you should really recap when they share the thing.
And again, nothing. Like, they're looking for
I
stuff.
will collect it, it's an email, I think that's what it is, and I was like, that makes
Larger. Either of this could be a good lateral, or two, hey, there's a lot of good pieces here, and it would be a feather in my cap that is still a career and it's not applying. Because I know
I think we'll call the meeting back to order. Not yet.
So about that heads up, I was supposed to give you.
Right.
Hold on.
Right.
All right, the meeting is now called back to order. I think at this point, I'll hand it over to Donna Oster with the Michigan Association of School Boards to facilitate our discussion.
Thank you. Okay, well, let me start by kind of laying out what's gonna happen next. I've had a couple of conversations with the board to manage their expectations about what they need to do next. But I think it's good for you all to kind of know the next steps as well. So first, let me say, this is not an easy place to be, and I don't mean where I'm sitting, I actually mean where the board is sitting. So I know from the, I don't know how many phone calls I have had in the last 2 months, but a lot, I know that all of you are very invested in this decision, and I know that your board members are very invested in this decision based on the phone calls and emails that I've had with them. And so I can say with complete sincerity that I really do believe that everybody here has the best interest of Waterford in mind right now in this decision making based on all the conversations I've had with all of you. So I just think it's important to kind of check in on that now, because I know that you guys want to turn the page, right? I understand that. We've had a lot of conversations about that. So I have asked the board, once they were done reviewing the feedback forms that they got this evening, so yesterday's feedback forms they took home with them, and they had the opportunity to review them during the day today, and now they have just completed not just reviewing the feedback forms from all of you that you submitted today, but also some of the materials that the candidates left with them, right, looking through those materials as well. We did receive some information kind of over the span of the last couple of weeks, mostly the last week, and so those things that were shared with me, I've had follow-up conversations about, and also had conversations with the board members about those. So understand that whomever the board decides this evening to move forward in this process, the board members will all have homework assigned to them so that they can start to dig more deeply into the background and qualifications and experiences of whoever their finalists are. So that's kind of the next step after tonight for your board. So what I have asked them to do then is to be prepared to just debrief on each of the folks that they had the opportunity to interview. And so what we'll do is we'll walk through the 7 candidates we interviewed. We'll do it in the order that they were interviewed. And just as a reminder, trustees, not all of you need to talk. So this isn't a case where I'm going to stare you down until you think of something to say. No need to do that, right? But what I do want to do is ask you, in the case of each of the candidates, what stood out for you, kind of what your thought and your thinking is about their candidacy at this point in time. You don't need to draw conclusions, it's more about what stood out for you. After we do that debrief walkthrough, then I'm going to ask the board members to give me just 2 people that they'd like to have another conversation with, right? I mean, I've said from the beginning, those of you who had the opportunity to talk with me before, okay, so we just had a cup of coffee, first round interview, we just had a cup of coffee, now we're going to start to think about who we might want to take out to dinner, right? So let's not get ahead of ourselves about who the next superintendent of Waterford is, because we've got a lot more work to do before that happens. So, right, just reiterating that to the trustees and also to the audience members as well. So, that said, I'll kind of open the floor for feedback and perspective as far as what stood out for you, or what did you notice of particular interest with regard to Dr. Pam Campbell. Sure.
I can begin. I thought she was incredibly genuine, kind. I felt like she was probably right where she should be to affect change. Her experiences seem to be really focused on a much smaller district, and I felt like Waterford might be a really big jump from that.
Thank you. So as you're thinking about your comments, trustees, so you probably a good idea to take a look at the selection criteria that we developed, right? That's what's driving this, so let's just keep that in mind. Other feedback or perspective on Pam Campbell?
One of the items for me that stood out is she emphasized a few times, I believe, that she really wanted to have a 5-year or even a 10-year plan, 5-year goals, 10-year goals. I think that's very important. We need that. And I think she said that several times. I had it written down. So I think that was certainly a benefit that I liked from her.
Thank you.
I agree. What was said, I thought she was very kind. I thought she was very genuine. I didn't get a really good sense of why she actually wanted to come here. So for me, that was a little concerning. It
Terry, we can switch and start to talk about your reflections on Dr. Catherine Cost.
Go ahead.
I felt that her responses were very well, I thought her responses were very considerate in terms of, thought she put a lot of thought into what she wanted to say, but she was very deliberate about what she wanted to say. And I just got a sense of just some introspection into why she took this career and what she thought she got for her position.
Thank you. Sure, John, thank you.
I really appreciated her vision, that she recognized and reiterated and understood that teaching and learning is our primary focus. She did value strategic thinking and planning and seemed to be very abreast of current educational trends and the need to stay, the need for a district to continue to embrace and move forward with those changing trends as well, so that we're training our youngest learners and all learners for the future.
Also wanted to add, the other thing I like that she emphasized delegation quite a bit, and that she could be a lawyer and delegating things were important to her, and I liked the fact that when asked about how to inspire staff members, it was, the answer was in empowering them, and not necessarily material rewards. This was more empowerment.
Thank you. Let's open the hand.
Yeah, one of the things she talked about was obviously, and I think a lot of the candidates did, was working with the Board of Education from day one. She basically, something stood out, she said, day one, we need to kind of lay ground rules, our relationship. And I think right now, with our board and superintendent, that's very important. We need to, from day one, whoever is our new superintendent, figure out what our roles are, and so we're together, we're on the same team, we're on board. I like the fact that she mentioned about communication with the board. Yeah, she said if we're in line at Costco, and somebody asks us something, she doesn't want us to be surprised, which other candidates did to say as well. The superintendent doesn't get surprised, board members shouldn't be surprised. We have to have that communication, good communication, so when we are in line at Costco or Kroger and somebody does bring something up, we do have knowledge of it, we know. So I was impressed by that.
Thank you.
I agree. Okay, I didn't agree, or I do agree with what Ms. Hall said about her calmness and her thorough answers, very thoughtful. And just some things that stood out again was the inspiring people, asking people what would make the biggest difference, what could be done in a better way, constantly. So she was doing that a lot. And I especially liked, she talked about a situation where she decided to facilitate the meeting herself and took it on, and it didn't go well, and then she elicited the help of her administration, and they developed a rubric, and then the team decided. So I liked that as a leader, she was willing to say, okay, I messed this up, we're gonna have to fix that. So I thought that was just a good quality.
Thank you.
I believe it was Farmington Hills that she didn't have enough people for their IAA program.
Enough slots.
Enough
Yeah.
slots, and so she
Yeah.
decided to, I don't know if she decided with the board, but she was able to offer to more students. It wasn't a problem, it was something, it was a took advantage of a problem and turned it around to a positive. Let's see.
Thank you.
In her initial comments, indicating passion was an education was a passion for her. They had a 16.5% fund balance in her district, and the communication I thought was good. The use of social media, communicating with the students, talking about how the students will let you know or give you feedback. You use an example of the student walkouts and how that's been occurring. And her wanting to communicate with not only the community, but community leaders and business leaders. So I thought that was good.
Thank you.
Also, I know it sounds like she has a good relationship with her board in Wyandotte. Sounds like she's well-liked. She has I think a contract now through 2022, 2023, I'm not sure. But when we asked her about what about this job, and she said, I'm very content in Wyandotte, I like it there, I have a great relationship, but I feel in Waterford I can make a bigger difference to more kids. And that kind of stuck out to me that she's obviously making a difference, but she can make a difference to even more. And she seemed very genuine with that.
Thank you. All right, if you're comfortable then, we'll change and start to just talk about what stood out for us with regard to Michael, I'm going to say his name wrong, Musri.
Where was he from?
Armani. Yeah, County Employers.
Thank you, Bill. Everything that he talked about on his resume is impressive. I love the M-STEP, the ACT, the SAT scores, the increase in them and everything. He had some great ideas, brought some great stuff to his district. My only concern is that, can we say concerns?
You sure can.
Oh, okay. My only concern is that his district is very small. And when I was looking at the stuff, I know I had said something to Joan about it, I don't see on here where he deals with a lot of title stuff, like restricted monies, and that would be, I mean, we have Bill, which Joan said, well, you know, we have Bill, we do have Bill, but I think some people may say, oh, well, they have $100 million budget, and really, we don't even have close to that much, because some of it just has to be used in such a specific way. So that would be my concern, is that we didn't know a lot about that.
I like the sense of humor. I thought he was kind of funny there, and I like someone that has a sense of humor. But the size of the district concerns me. When we have a high school that's larger than what his district is, that's just a concern. He'd be a great guy, but
Thank you.
I just want to echo his comments relative to the work that he's done. It is an impressive body of work. Anytime you can look at scores, when you had ACT scores that move from an 18.8 average to a 20.2 in the course of 4 years, that's a tough needle to move, and that's really significant. Also, in correlation with one of my comments was, he mentioned laughter. And he actually said, I want my staff to be happy, that, you know, he mentioned laughter, and that, I think that's a really important piece of having good morale, and to make sure that work is a place that we enjoy. And so I appreciate his comments on that. And they do share the concern that they perhaps don't have the knowledge and experience of dealing with the needs of a diverse student population. And, 2,000 students, 5 schools, $17 million budget is very different than Waterford.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll say it. I had concerns that, basically, pardon me if I'm wrong, quarter of their, let me see how it goes.
I think like 26%.
Quarter of their budget was school choice. And, for me, that's a concern. I know we all have different opinions on school choice. And I suppose there are good things and not good things that come with that, but, it just stuck out to me. That's a concern for me.
Thank you.
He mentioned, one of the things that stuck out, again, forgive me, because a lot of my notes are all over the place, I'm writing and listening, but, Senator Rivaldi talked about steps and for their teachers, and, I believe he said, you know, despite the financial hardship, he was very big on keeping the steps for their staff and their teachers, and getting those steps and going step. I think that's something that's, you know, really a very big topic right now, especially here in Waterford, teachers and steps. And you seem very big on that's just has to happen. Obviously, you have to have money to make it happen, but they seem to have made it happen in Armada. So again, a smaller district. I think he had a good personality. Seems to be someone I think that, you know, I could work with. I think the entire board could. I think the community and staff could really learn to like him. Again, and all candidates have very impressive resumes. I mean, there's not one that has not been successful in what they've done. They didn't get to this point by being bad at what they do. But you know, I think those again stuck out to me with him.
Thank you.
I like his answer to style of leadership, you know, leading with positivity, the sharing of ideas, putting together strategic planning sessions, and you know, he really emphasized giving everybody buy-in to the process, so that way, you know, they would be committed to it.
Thank you. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about your reflection on John Mertz.
Sense that he's very passionate about what he does. He kept referring to experience and commitment. You know, he doesn't do anything halfway, so I appreciate his passion for what he does. He really enjoys being in education, and just really love what he does.
Thank you.
I also felt that he seemed to have a real zeal for him. He seemed excited. Not to be short per se, but when he talked about put a self-empowered football field, we've had that for a while. The things that he's done, because again, he's such a small district, we're a big district, we've done so much. I just think he'd be belongs. I was hoping the ISD would bring a different perspective. That would just be a little bit of a change, but I didn't feel that. He seemed to be a great guy, he truly cares, but I don't feel like he's the one that's ready to carry us to the next level.
Thank you. Other perspective?
I thought he described himself as a servant leader, a collaborative leader, and also recognized that sometimes you need to be the voice. So I really appreciated, he said, you know, I don't do it halfway, I care deeply, he used the words care deeply many times, work nonstop to create a relationship, I want what's best for staff and students. So I felt in terms of recognizing, valuing, and affirming staff members, you know, he really seemed to articulate that well and feel it right to his core. It came through in virtually every question.
And I was going to say, I love, when we were talking about communication, I love what you said, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it for you. So, I mean, that's pretty spot on, I think. So I really, really appreciated that. That was a great quote.
Okay, so that concludes, last night's interview and perspective on those candidates. So let's talk about the folks that we had the opportunity to talk with today, starting with the first interview of the evening, Susan Bird.
If I'm correct, he's not the superintendent or never has been.
That's correct.
But he's been right there in the central office. He's from a large district compared to the majority of our other candidates tonight. Sometimes you don't have to be the superintendent to be the one making the change per se. I enjoyed that part. He seemed to be part of a lot of things. And I think you bring fresh ideas and have knowledge of the larger districts.
Thank you.
Something he said that, again, I think it's very important, especially with kind of how things have gone. He said the superintendent and the board, we're a team of 8. And again, what jumped out to me is he said we are the chief models of what we expect to go on in our district. So, we are what people are looking at. And if we get along and we play nice, hopefully everybody else will. And when things are going well with us, it's going to just kind of go right down to the community, which I think it has in this district. So I think that's very important to me. We need to get on the same page, support one another. I enjoyed listening to him. I think he had a lot of good idea. He kind of inspired me. I was excited. I found some candidates as I was listening to some of their answers, but he kind of made me like, this maybe, he could be a good, again, facts. He seemed like, he said he had a great relationship with his staff, which again, I think is important. We've lost a lot of the staff. We need to make sure that we do retain them however we can. I don't know if it was him, it might have been where, I don't want to say it's him until I know for sure, so I'll wait and let it maybe come back.
Okay. Oh, Mary?
I really liked his team of 8 approach to the board. I loved his thought process about the board modeling PLC behavior. Oh my goodness, if we could get into a system of analyzing data as a board and have a process, talk through everything, and it just became a ritual. That was, oh my goodness, I thought that was a very cool idea, and I'd love to hear more about that. I loved his exit survey, wanting to, with the thrust behind that about just wanting to know, finding information, and the more we know and learn. The stairway approach that he talked about, tier system, all educational, a lot of educational words. I knew what they all were. I wondered, if others did. So getting to expand on that will definitely be interesting. His financial review committee, I thought was very interesting. there's a lot of things that he said that I was interesting, yeah, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I liked a lot of his ideas. I think he had a lot of energy, excitement that he brought. He presented well. I liked the financial review committee as well. I liked his ideas on the strategic plan. I liked what he talked about, trying to create a win-win situation, within some needs so that everybody can have some win in the end product. I like his, what he talked about, his communication, being truthful, always being willing to say the truth, even you're gonna have people who are gonna want your ear, but you just have to be upfront with them and truthful with them, and I think that was a big thing. And he talked about trust, relationships, and transparency in the district, which I enjoyed.
Thank you. Yes,
I really appreciated his enthusiasm. I also noted the numerous references to PLCs that we talked about. His enthusiasm was incredibly contagious. And I like the fact that he's been a teacher and a principal, so he has been in the classroom. And I like that he really stressed being consistent with your message and not telling somebody one thing one day and something different the next day, so that the trust factor and the consistency factor was incredibly important to him. And I think that goes a long way. So I think all of those things really spoke to me, but the enthusiasm and just his excitement was encouraging.
Thank you.
Something too, he said, and he talked about commitment and trust with the staff, and he had mentioned about, I believe when they had to close the school, I think, that if a teacher was moved, obviously if the school got closed, they got moved, but the commitment to them was, you moved once, you're not gonna move again. That's where you're at. And he said it built up commitment, us to them, the kind of things, so doing this, and trust us, you're not gonna go anywhere else. And I think that's very important. Again, it hasn't always been about being able to pay your staff and they pay the costs, but if you can kind of give them other ways, trust and commitment, and that sometimes that certainly helps retain.
In addition to the other things that were mentioned, one of the stories that stuck out for me in his different results was when he was talking about a transportation issue, and he said he looked at the clock and it was 9 o'clock, and he said, okay, we're not leaving until we figure out a path forward. I think that speaks volumes about your commitment to your staff, and that we're gonna work through this together. And he used the phrase, we're all in this together, and that's walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And so I also really appreciated that he has organized 2 community strategic plans, and he recognized the need for a vision and strategic planning in our district. And that in all things, he brought back over and over and over again that teaching and learning is our primary focus, and that we need to value staff and our students and our community. So I thought those were really good threads that ran through each of the different responses in one way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
Also, I liked his, he called it, we talked about holding staff members accountable, and he talked about the maintenance and operations walkthroughs that he does, picking things out, and then fixing, and it got to one building and it really didn't need anything, and it was his baby, but he would be coming. So I think that was a good thing, and talk about a collaborative approach and expectations. So I like that.
Thank you. Okay. Let us talk about our next interview, which was, of course, with Bill Holbrook. his interview stood out for you?
I think certainly, Bill's experience, within this district is a plus for him, and he definitely has a history here. And I think, what always stands out for me, with Bill is his integrity, and, his straightforwardness, and his honesty. And I think a lot of the answers were, sort of finance-based. I know that it's all related, you gotta have money to teach and keep everything going. But I think the big thing that sticks out for me for Bill, really the most is just his history here and his knowledge in that respect.
Thank you.
Heather and I didn't talk, but I put bullets, for each candidate, and I had integrity, financial knowledge, passion about Waterford, consummate professional, and cares deeply about our district. And, I think that's essentially Heather's comments as well, that, we know Bill, and we know that he, when you think about Waterford, that we know that his integrity is always there, his truthfulness, his honestness, and again, that passionate about our district, which is an amazing thing.
Thank you.
He talked about everything he's involved in and with the district, and Bill is involved with so much. You know, I think so many people see him as the money guy or the finance guy, but like you said, it's not uncommon in the morning, he's up on the roof of a building with a construction company or roofers going over the roof, and then he's back in the finance department dealing with that. In the afternoon, he's in the mascot outfit doing that. At night, he's at the board meeting, giving a financial presentation. Bill's probably one of the most visible that I've seen at different events. Bill is there so much at games and plays and musicals and concerts. I see Bill at a lot of our events. Patricia, I think you had always mentioned that Rob Cedarwood was the smartest person you knew, but I think Bill will give him a run for his money. You know, Bill is, when I've talked to Bill, he's incredibly smart, yet he also will give it to me and bring it down to my level to where I can understand. Very patient, you know, with me when we talk. You know, a very good human being, very smart human being.
I enjoyed seeing some of the stuff about Bill that we don't normally see, you know, being a mascot outfit and doing some of the fun things and participating in the macaroni cheese box pyramid thing. I mean, his credentials speak for themselves, his expertise in finance, you know, is helping us increase our fund balance, you know, to 7%. So all of the commitment that he brought to this district, I think all of that speaks for it. But you know, really learning a little bit more about some of the lighter side of Bill, I think that was a nice piece. He talked about his, you know, just seeing him in a suit, and shows up to the board meetings and talks about the finances and numbers, but behind the scenes.
I like Bill. I don't think there's anything he can't do. Just he's a guy that can do it all. We need to check with Bill. That Bill can do that. But in reading through the comments, it doesn't always matter if the candidate can or can't do things. There's concern about his teaching, not being a teacher. Again, I don't know if that's what because someone would look at it and say, oh, he wasn't a teacher, he doesn't understand my job. If he would lose credibility because of that, which, again, I know that he wouldn't, because I know that the man has a huge heart. There's nothing that he can't do, but his credibility may suffer. And I don't know if I can have the superintendent have people questioning whether, well, you never taught him this. Neither did my brother-in-law, but he was very, very successful with the school. But you have to have the right community, and I think Waterford would ride him a little bit on that type of thing, and that may drag him down to where he doesn't need to be. If he does or doesn't, when the superintendent, we have all the candidates, Bill's still gonna be there to help them with this. I'm not saying one way or the other, I just wanna say that Bill's are made, nothing Bill can do, but because of perception, I hate to have that as an April. And that just brings something to mind, it's too bad that people just don't understand that nothing Bill can't do.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about our last interview candidate, Jim Baker.
He seemed quite a bit of experience. Seemed appeared to be pretty confident. Relatable. We'll talk a lot about open communication and a lot about the Galileo program, which I'm a little familiar with, and this is a good program.
I thought of all the candidates, the question about attracting and retaining school personnel, he gave the most specific, concrete, out-of-the-box thinking ideas. I thought he talked about going to job fairs, about putting in 3 to 5 year plans so that you knew when staff members were going to be retiring, going to the recruitment week, the Oakland County Consortium, created their own job fair, teachers, bus drivers, food service, all of those types of things. And then the partnership with Western Michigan University. I just thought he had really put a lot of thought into that particular issue, which really is starting to face all school districts, and appreciated the out-of-the-box thinking that he and his team have done in that regard. That was really great.
Thank you.
I think I'll back him on that and kind of say the same thing, and that really stuck out, that he did say, he mentioned the conferences that he went to, and the one, he was one of only 3 schools, and the other one he went to, he was the only school. So he was there in the only school district to have this whole group of special education teachers to basically talk to him and his district about it. And I think that's a tough position to find, and what an opportunity for him to have be the only district there. And again, thinking out of the box, nobody else thought to do that, but he thought to do that, and he was there. Very important.
Thank you.
I thought he had some interesting ideas as well. Talking about a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, and 10-year plan is, I think, something that, it's interesting that he's done that, because it's something that I think we should consider doing. I liked how we talked about reviewing departments for best practice audits, like keeping things, making sure it's fresh and it's just not, the way we've always done things. I also thought the succession plan for all departments, like how can what we're doing now get passed on smooth transition to someone else is a neat idea. And his discussion about having a blue ribbon committee to decide about a school closing and just that kind of picture, just grander than we've done something like that before. All interesting, he's got a lot of experience there, that's kind of what I sum it up as saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree, a lot of experience, he brings to the table, and I mean, I like that he started off at a community college in the 80s and worked his way up, get a bachelor's degree, and then went on, you know, to get all the extensive superintendency experience that he's had in a big district in Huron Valley and Detroit. I liked, he talked about, board superintendent working together and communicating a lot. I like how he said that over communicating is better than, it was really that his thought process was to over communicate, to call, the board president, to have 3 different board presidents and their 3 different personalities and how they wanted, you know, the relationship to happen and the information to go out to the larger board, calling the, you know, board president, you know, during their window when they know they're available in the car, kind of thing. I thought that was, you know, good for his communication. I liked his ideas, his out the box thinking of, you know, retaining staff, bringing in new talent. Also, how he talked about how they had the Zott family sponsor the stadium rights to the 2 high schools. You know, I think that's just an example of some of that out the box thinking that can really be helpful. You know, happening in the district that is just as large as the Waterford is, you know, shows that he's got to have that kind of experience right here.
Thank you. Okay, board members, so you need to take a minute or two and, you know, collect your thoughts. I want you to think about the totality of the work you've done, right? So you need to check back in with your selection criteria. You need to not just consider, remember we talked about how, you know, interviews are just a piece of the puzzle, they're not the complete puzzle. So you definitely want to be thinking about the background and experience of these candidates. And then make yourself a note as far as, you know, who are the 2 people right now that you would like to have another conversation with. I said, don't get too far down the road on this because there's still a lot of work to be done. But take a minute and make your notes. And then I'm going to start with the board president.
Oh, great. I thought it was more president, you get to go last.
Leadership is important.
Meeting adjourned.
What are you joking?
You was joking. You're making notes to yourself about.
I was gone.
So I'm gonna talk to the audience for a minute while the board is kind of getting their notes together. So, if you were to go back and roll the tape in every point in every district, when I'm to this point with the board, I say the same thing. So this isn't about your district, this is about what's the right thing to do. So regardless of what the board decides tonight, you need to let me communicate with the internal candidate, right? He deserves the respect of the process. So whether he's being invited back or he isn't being invited back, it's my job to communicate that message to him. So I'm asking all of you in the audience to please honor the process and let me do that, okay? And this isn't about you, this is just about, I understand how tight relationships are in districts, and I know that, you probably have a sense that you're keeping him in the loop or something, but that's one thing that I would just encourage you all to let me do the heavy lifting on that. You'll have plenty of opportunity to interact with him, whatever it unfolds here, so I would appreciate that. And everybody's giving me different looks from my audience. I swear if you roll the tape, I do it everywhere I go.
Now you know that.
Oh, I know, it's tough stuff for sure. There we go. So before I start, I'd like to see that you're all ready to start. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. So again, we're just gonna answer the two folks that you'd like to have another conversation with at this point in time.
All right. Scott Lindberg and Catherine Cost.
Thank you.
I have both of those.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Lindbergh and Baker.
Thank you.
I have Scott Lindbergh and Catherine Cost.
Thank you.
I also have Scott Lindbergh and Catherine Cost.
I know. Rules are hard to follow.
I'll go last, so I'll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my pretty strong statement. So my suggestion to the board is that we would move forward by inviting Catherine Cost and Scott Lindbergh back for second conversations with you all. That's what I'm suggesting to you. So in that mix, we want to make sure that you have a level of comfort with that, John.
Yeah, she was my third.
Okay. And so now would be a good time to entertain a motion to such, and then second, and then any discussion on that.
I'll make a motion that the Waterford School District Board of Education invite Dr. Catherine Cost and Mr. Scott Lindbergh back for second round interviews. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any comments or questions?
I just think this was an incredibly difficult, process. I think every single person that we heard from and read resumes and looked at reviews, I mean, every single one of those people brought some strengths to the table, and I think that's what made it so, difficult. And so, I appreciate the process that we've gone through to get to where we're at. I feel like it's been relatively smooth, and we've all done, our due diligence, and, but I guess I just want to give a shout out to all the people that put themselves out there and came forward, and no one person is gonna have every single box checked, and they frequently had different boxes checked, but they all had tremendous skill sets and experiences, and I just think it takes a lot to put yourself out there and make yourself vulnerable to the incoming district and your outgoing district, and so I just appreciate all of them.
those same comments exactly.
I was gonna
Here, yes.
It has been nice, and again, I think we heard from you at our last meeting, some of the feedback you got from our community. And there was a lot of people not happy with this board and how things have gone. But at least through this process, I think it's gone very smooth, like Heather said. We unanimously picked you and MASB to lead the process. We nearly unanimously chose the 8 people to come for interviews. Nearly unanimously picked the 2 people tonight to come back for a second round of interviews. So, you know, I think back to last year when we had some meetings with Marlene, and she had mentioned that, she said, you guys have issues, but she said, I look at so many of your votes that you take, and you guys normally agree on things. It's not always. So I do think I think you've been a big part of that help. Again, I know this is not over. We still have, you know, a lot of work to do, but we're getting closer. So I thank you. I thank the board. I thank the community for coming out, taking their time, especially when it was such a beautiful day yesterday, giving us feedback. I think almost every member I talked to said we were up late last night going through all of the feedback. So I certainly appreciate that, and I look forward to continuing for the next week and be back here again a week from tonight, I believe.
I'd like to add that the audience feedback was very helpful. I think it was very thoughtful, very in tune, and there were some comments that I hadn't thought of and that did go, oh, wow, interesting. You know, so taking the time to do that was very helpful in guiding us, and I think our decision has matched what I saw.
Just want to make a comment as well. Just want to thank the community for coming out. It's 2 nights in a row, pretty late nights, and you guys are all very committed and took some time to thoroughly fill out the forms, and we all read through them, and it was helpful in the process and giving us different perspectives on things. It's a tremendous, arduous process. This is my second one. I know other board members have been through several of them. And, it was hard the first time, it's hard the second time, but it is a extremely important decision. Moving somebody to the leader of our district, and we're working collaboratively with the board and the direction of the district for our families, our students, and our employees, our staff, and everybody. So, and the commitment that's been shown within the community the past two nights is just, it's awesome to see that so many people are involved and want to be part of this process.
So with that, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Great, so let's just talk about next steps. So, as soon as this meeting's over, my first phone call is gonna be during Tuesday. So know that. I won't leave tonight till I touch base with all the candidates, because they're all waiting. So just know that that's just a normal part of search. They know it's gonna be a late call. We've already had those conversations. For you all, thinking about what next steps are. So, you're gonna get a communication from me that has some assignments for you to do. And so, as I mentioned previously, you'll have some phone calls to make, pros and cons, for both of these finalists. Everybody who has worked in education has a history, and it's not for me to decide what makes sense here, it's for you to decide what makes sense here. And so that's by design, that now you won't be out there on your own, so when I send you your assignment, you'll have a script. You obviously don't have to follow the script verbatim, but I provide it so that it, you know, gives you some confidence in what you're doing. You should take notes when you're having those conversations with folks. How you will share that information is, of course, legally, you're welcome to share it one-on-one. But it generally, from a public perspective, works best when, after we have our next round of interviews, when we debrief, you can leave what you've learned, you know, in your calls and your homework into some of the reflection and conversation that we have about those candidates. If you have something that you come across that you know, it's not a perception or an opinion, like you need to know if it's fact or fiction, and, I need to do some, further checking, then just get a hold of me right away. I would recommend texting me or emailing me if that's the case, so that I get on it right away, because we've got a pretty short window. So, we already have a pretty good plan for what those visits to the district look like, because we had worked that out a couple of weeks ago, before Megan went on leave. And so what we can expect is that the two finalists, unless we hear differently, they'll be coming to the district on that day of interviews to tour the district. There's 2 different cabinet level staff that will be escorting them around. And then we'll have an open house format with both candidates simultaneously, so staff and the public can interact with those folks before we move into the final, I should say second round interviews. So in thinking about those second round interviews, I'm gonna send you, and I'll reiterate this to you tomorrow via email because I know you're tired, but I'm gonna send you kind of my assessment of strength and potential challenges for both of the finalists, along with some starter questions. An additional piece of your homework is that you each need to put together 3 questions for both of those finalists. You know what is legal and what is not, because I've already shared that with you in a previous training. And you don't need to compare questions, because this next round of interviews is not gonna be this formal. It's gonna be much more conversational. So Heather, if you have a question that you've documented that you want to ask candidate A, but you hear that Mary has asked something similar to it, you'll know not to ask it, right? If there's an elephant in the room, I'll write that into my question, because I don't expect you, or my questions, I don't expect you to have to figure out how to construct those ones that you may feel less comfortable with. Now understand, I won't ask the question, I'll just provide it to all of you, and you can choose to ask it, and whoever asks it, you're just gonna mark it off the list, okay? So your homework assignments are gonna be, you're gonna be making some phone calls and background checking, taking you in, some of these conversations I've obviously already had, but I want you to hear directly from some of the people I've heard from. And so that's part of it, and then 3 questions for each of your finalists. We don't need to compare notes on that, and I'll give you additional resource material on that as well. Okay? All right. Do you have any questions?
3.
I'm ready. You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. You did good work. You did good work. I know you're feeling a little rough. I know you're a little heartsick. I know what you're all thinking. I know. But you did good work, and this is just another step in the process, right?
Thank you for your leadership and your tips.
Okay, meeting adjourned.